I was recently talking with a client that was excited about getting married, but nervous about actually moving in and living with each other. And so they asked me if there was a checklist that they could go through to ensure that they were covering all the topics that they needed to before actually moving in with each other. And at first, the way it was phrased, I was a bit resistant, as there's not so much a checklist that we can do to perfectly prepare us for this journey ahead. Marriage, living together, parenthood, even the death of a parent or loved one, these are not journeys that we can ever perfectly prepare for. And so there's not a checklist that if we go through all the items of the checklist, then we're ready for what's ahead. These are journeys that often the journey prepares us for the journey. Inevitably, regardless of the checklist, things are going to come up that you're not necessarily prepared to handle, and that you simply have to deal with in real time. This is why, for example, we start our marriage journey with a vow that we commit to love one another for better or worse, in sickness and health, to death do us part. That vow communicates we don't know what's coming ahead, but regardless of what's coming ahead, I will choose to love you. I will still say I do, regardless of the ups and downs that come our way. But after my session, I became curious and started to wonder if my digital assistant could create a checklist, a premarital checklist for Christian couples preparing to live together. And so this is what it came up with. Item number 1 is simply to share values and goals. It says to discuss and align on long-term goals for your relationship, career, family, and spiritual journey. Identify and agree on core values that would guide your decisions. This is a good place to start. I would typically phrase it as a shared vision or a shared mission with a kingdom mindset. And so why has God brought the two of us together? That sure, that is to help pay the bills and raise family and the like. But more than that, I believe God has brought us together for a greater mission, a greater purpose. What is that mission? What is that purpose? And that shared purpose then becomes the foundation for everything else. And so as we're deciding on our family, as we're deciding on our career, as we're deciding on where we want to live or how to handle our money, it all comes back to that shared purpose, that shared mission that God has set us on. Item 2 is then communication and conflict resolution. It suggests to schedule regular check-ins to discuss feelings, needs, and any issues. Practice active listening and develop a conflict resolution strategy that includes prayer and understanding. Again, pretty good. As I've discussed in another video, the importance of communication in marriage, where communication by itself doesn't solve anything, but good communication is like turning on a light in a dark room, that many couples bump into issues simply because they don't talk about them. And so another key foundation in a relationship is being able to simply talk about the things that are important to us. But again, at some point, we then must have good conflict resolution skills as well. And this is where, if you don't already have them, a good counselor can help equip you in that arena where you can actually resolve your conflicts and move forward. Some of it in counseling, what we can sort through as well is the difference between difficulties and problems, where sometimes difficulties, those are not things that necessarily are resolved. So difficulties may be our personality differences or our family of origin or how we simply do life. There may be a lot of differences that we bring to the marriage that there are difficulties, but we don't resolve them per se. An introvert today is still going to be an introvert 10 years from now. So that's not a problem to solve per se, but you learn how to live well with it. Problems are those things that, like chores and money, that can't have a clear solution. And so conflict resolution is dealing with those issues, how to resolve solvable problems, and then how to live well with those things that are perpetual, those difficulties that are simply baked into our relationship. Item 3 is spiritual growth and practice. Establish a routine for joint devotionals and prayer. Commit to regular church attendance and decide on shared spiritual leadership roles. Again, a lot of good stuff here. What I would add is that part of our spiritual growth and practice needs to both be individually and as a couple. And so, yes, there's a lot of things that we would do jointly as a couple, going to worship, praying together, and the like. But we must not neglect our individual personal spiritual growth as well. And so there may be times we're praying personally and reading scripture personally, or other types of spiritual disciplines and formation that we're doing personally that we then bring back to the marriage as well, that would enhance the marriage after we've done that individually first. Some of what we're doing here also is creating the culture for our home. And so how do we live individually? How do we live as a couple? And then if God blesses us with children, what is the culture that we want to set in our home? And so praying and scripture reading and church attendance, those are the things that we do. Those are part of our values. Here's how we live life. And so part of what's important for couples to discuss is what is the spiritual culture that we want to establish in our home. Item 4 is financial planning. Create a joint budget covering all expenses, savings, and tithing. Be transparent about debts and set financial goals together. Again, a lot of this is going to come back to open communication, where it's not so much about the amount of money that we have in our bank account, but our ability to communicate around those things. Part of what comes out here as well is just our different meanings of money. And so money means different things to different people. So for some, money is about status or security or enjoyment or control. And so we need to understand that how I approach money may be different than how my spouse approach money. And so money for me may be a point of security, and so I want to save, where for her, money might be a point of enjoyment that she wants to spend. And then we might have some combination of that, but part of that open communication is, what does money mean to us individually? And now how do we set a budget that honors those differences? So what we have to be mindful of here as well is our mindset when it comes to money. That when we're single, we often think in individual terms, that this is my money. But when we're married, the two becomes one, so it's no longer my money or your money, it becomes our money. And so regardless of who earns it, who makes it, it becomes ours. And so the budget is our budget. We're deciding what to do with our money. There will be discretionary funds that within that you get to do what you want with those discretionary funds. But as a whole, the mindset is a we-ness, ours, and not a mine versus yours. Item number 5 is boundaries and privacy. Clearly define and respect boundaries regarding personal space, communication, and social interactions. Maintain privacy for personal items and digital devices. This is a good one, and I'm sure it will spark a lot of good conversations and maybe even controversy for some couples. Certainly there is a sense in which the two becoming one, there's an element of transparency there, a naked openness with each other in which there are no secrets. And so part of marriage is being naked and without shame with each other. And so there should be no secrets in marriage. At the same time, there's still a place for privacy. And so, for example, I have a journal that is my private journal that my wife doesn't have access to. And so this is not something that I keep secret from her, where I'm doing things that I'm not supposed to be doing. But it is a place for privacy. That two becoming one doesn't negate our distinctions, that we still have separate identities, separate thoughts, and there's a place for privacy. There's a place to have our own private counsel, as it were. Of course, if trust has been broken, then this is a different conversation. But in a reasonably healthy and mature marriage, there's a reasonable expectation for privacy as well. Item 6 is household responsibilities. Divide chores and maintenance tasks fairly. Establish rules for keeping shared spaces clean and respect each other's need for personal space. The conversation here gets back to who does what. What chores are mine? What chores are yours? What chores do we do together? Who cleans the toilets, for example? Do I clean the toilets? Do you clean the toilets? Do we come up with some rotating schedule in which we both clean the toilets? And if it's one of those situations that neither of us wants to clean the toilets, then what do we do in that situation? And it may be that if it makes sense financially, that some chores are better hired out instead of it being a point of tension, a point of conflict between the two of us. But again, it's coming back to having those conversations. Who does what around the house? Item 7 is time management. Schedule regular date nights and quality time together. Support each other's need for personal time and maintain a healthy work-life balance. This is similar to the transparency and privacy conversation that we just mentioned, where here there's a good dance between our time together and our time apart. Both are needed and should be intentionally pursued. Often in life, work will demand our attention, kids will demand our attention, but what often gets neglected is our couple time and our personal time. But there's often differences here that when we have to fight for both, often one spouse tends to desire, need more couple time, while the other spouse desires and needs more individual time. and one is not better than the other. They both need to be honored in their own right. And so it's not something that we need to fight about or forfeit one for the other, but recognizing them both as legitimate needs, and how do we make that now work for us as a couple. Item 8 is social and family relations. Establish how we interact with each other's families and set appropriate boundaries. Balance time with mutual friends and individual social circles. Pretty straightforward here. What I add is just having conversations around the guidelines, hospitality, like who do we invite over into our home? Can some people come over unannounced? Or there are social events that we go to as a couple, and it's expected for us to go to as a couple, or there's social things that we're okay with going to apart. Just having those conversations of how do we interact with the family. Every time that you see your family, do I need to go with you, or are there times that you would go to your family by yourself? When they come over, do I need to stay when your family comes, or is there times where you can have your family over and I can do something else? Just having those conversations of how do we handle our shared social space together. Item 9 is intimacy and sexuality. Discuss expectations on boundaries for physical and emotional intimacy. Address concerns for sexual health and contraception in alignment with your beliefs. This is a big one for me, and I'll link a separate PDF that goes through some questions that are designed for couples to address the sexual part of their life. Part of what I've realized in my counseling career, that many couples, they can have sex much easier than actually talk about sex. And so the PDF is 15 questions that goes through the sexual part of your relationship. In general, the focus for me is not so much on health, but more on development and maturity. Who has God called us to be as sexual beings? And so all the way back to the beginning of our shared values, why did God create sexuality to begin with? That if we have a shared understanding of why God created sexuality, then a lot of the sexual part of our life gets to fall into place. And so like that analogy of the big rock and the little rocks, that once we put in those core values of why God created sexuality, a lot of the practical aspects of our sexual dance starts to fall into place. We still need to address those practical things, but often it starts with putting those big rocks in place first. And finally, item 10 is personal development. Support each other's personal growth and engage in joint activities that promote mutual development. Hold each other accountable in a loving and respectful manner. In short, it's just keep growing personally. That a mature and healthy marriage consists of mature and healthy individuals. And where our focus here is focusing on our respective side of the street, that we're responsible for growing up individually. And so am I finding mentors and spiritual directors, reading books and going to counseling, things that help me to grow as an individual? That yes, I want my wife to do the same, but ultimately she's responsible for her side of the street. How do I focus on mine? And then yes, we can mutually support each other. So as we mutually grow personally, then we can have a better and stronger marriage as well. Overall, I believe this is a very solid checklist for premarital couples preparing to live together. Of course, my bias is that the checklist often still needs a personal touch. And so this is where my premarital package for premarriage couples will come in, where if you need help just walking through these things and applying to your personal relationship, then finding a trusted other, like in premarital counseling, can be beneficial for you. And even if you've been married for a while, these may be good items to go through simply to enrich your marriage as well. And offer a marriage enrichment package very similar to the premarital package that goes through many of these items to help you simply set that foundation for your marriage, have that open communication, and grow into the marriage that God has called you to have. Thank you for watching. And if you found this checklist helpful, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might also benefit. And remember that a strong foundation for your marriage starts with shared values, open communication, and mutual respect. God bless.